If it takes a village to raise a child, then it takes a village to abuse a child. Part 2. Welcome to Part 2 of this series. Facing the truth about child abuse in our world is not an easy task. I honor your courage and willingness to take a deep dive into this meaningful journey into consciousness, into this profound journey into grounded awakening, into this crucial journey into the healing of child abuse in our world, into this imperative journey into healing abuse and trauma in our world. In part 1, I talked about child abuse and how it is not caused by just one abuser, but rather by a larger village of people playing different roles. I spoke of many examples of child sexual abuse, both private, not yet made public, and also once private, now public. I gave examples of how the sexual abuse of children requires not just one abuser, but rather a larger village to make and allow it to happen. In this part of the series, we will look at the village it takes to create child abuse on an even larger scale than before. It might be tempting to turn away and not learn more, but then turning away and not learning more is one of the ways we become part of the village that helps to abuse a child, and even many children. Leaving Neverland. In early 2019, the documentary Leaving Neverland premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. Following that, it was released on HBO in early March. It revealed the experiences of two men, ages 36 and 40, who had been groomed and then sexually abused by Michael Jackson, beginning when they were 7 and 10 years old. The two little boys, Wade and James, and their families were seduced and groomed by Michael Jackson. They were seduced and drawn in for the purpose of gaining their trust, so that down the road they would trust Michael. They would be blind, deaf, and numb to what Michael was doing and to the state of their own being, and they wouldn't dream of telling anyone what was going on with Michael. A child is vulnerable to such seduction and grooming. If as an adult someone is still seducible in the same way, it is an indication of some wounding in his or her childhood that leaves them still vulnerable and unconscious on a young level of their being. It takes a village to abuse a child. My awareness in my practice as a healing practitioner. As a depth psychotherapist and midwife to the soul, I have worked with countless adults who were abused in many ways during their childhood. Many ways, including sexual abuse. I have helped them work with the painful experiences, the painful memories as they came, the painful consequences in their inner and outer worlds. I have been with them as they have expressed their feelings, building their capacity to feel them and let them come out safely and for the purpose of healing. I have witnessed, heard, and felt with them as they have expressed their need for the abuse to have never happened at all, and just as much for someone to have helped them, for someone to have stopped the abuse. In each person's experience, no one stopped it, and no one helped them. So in this way, I know up close with people about whom I care deeply that it took a village to abuse these children. And knowing from experience with these people, I can also see the dynamic of it takes a village to abuse a child in other arenas and other forms. After watching both parts of Leaving Neverland, the truth of Wade's and James's experiences and the "it takes a village" dynamic was very clear and very resonant. How people out in the world responded to Leaving Neverland. Many denied the experiences revealed by Wade and James. Michael's family, Michael's estate, many of Michael's still devoted fans. Twitter was alive with denials and attacks on these two brave men and the people who created the documentary. While perhaps many of Michael's staff remained silent, it seems some came forward and revealed things they had been aware of. The families of the two children who had allowed their boys to sleep in Michael's room with him finally knew what had happened and spoke of their regret, sorrow, and more. All of these people made up the village who in one way or another participated in the ongoing sexual abuse of Wade and James and others. And then came another shocking example of a participant, someone who people would have perhaps never suspected, Barbra Streisand. Rolling Stone, March 23, 2019, reported, and I quote, "Speaking to the Times UK ahead of her London concerts this summer, Streisand said she absolutely believed the accounts of Wade Robson and James Safechuck, but added, 'You can say molested, but those children, as you heard say, they were thrilled to be there. They both married and they both have children, so it didn't kill them. His sexual needs were his sexual needs coming from whatever childhood he has or whatever DNA he has,' Streisand said of Jackson." End quote. How Barbra Streisand could think, feel, and say those things is a painful mystery. What wounds does she carry within her, both those known to her and those still repressed deep beneath her awareness, that could be revealed in her responses to this documentary? What trauma of her own is still unhealed within her that she could believe her attempts at apology could carry any weight, any resonance to truth? And Barbra Streisand is simply one of millions, although a celebrity icon at that. What a lot of impact. A celebrity icon like Michael Jackson was a celebrity icon. The world village that abuses our children. After the release of Leaving Neverland, something came across my desk about art in different forms that had been created by people who had acted out destructively in their lives. The essence of the message was, don't stop looking at or listening to a particular work of art just because the artist was destructive. This message took me to the lyrics of two of Michael Jackson's most famous songs. Although I was not at all a fan of Michael Jackson in his lifetime, I had seen and heard bits and pieces of him singing these two songs from time to time on the radio or television. I had had no interest in going further. When I recently saw the lyrics, I was so deeply affected. I saw that they so very likely described both someone who had been abused as a child and also someone who would perpetrate abuse on children, or already had been doing so. I know Thriller was not written by Michael, but he did sing it, dance it, embody it, live it on stage again and again for years, and apparently he also lived it in his life, probably his life as a child, and now it seems more certainly revealed that he lived it in his adult life with little children. And Michael did write bad and also embodied it and likely lived it in his life. Some lines from each. First from Thriller, 1982. It's close to midnight. Something evil's lurking from the dark. Under the moonlight, you see a sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream, but terror takes the sound before you make it. You start to freeze as horror looks you right between your eyes. You're paralyzed. 'Cause this is Thriller. Thriller night. And no one's gonna save you from the beast about to strike. And then lines from Bad in 1987. Your butt is mine. Gonna tell you right. Just show your face in broad daylight. I'm telling you on how I feel. Gonna hurt your mind. Don't shoot to kill. Come on. Well, they say the sky's the limit, and to me that's really true. But my friend, you have seen nothing. Just wait till I get through. Because I'm bad. I'm bad. Come on. And the whole world has to answer right now. Just to tell you once again who's bad. Questions flooded through me. How many people had been seduced by these two songs because they reflected the listener's own childhood wounds? How many had been drawn in by the horror of the memory of their own abuse, presented outside them in a song, dance, video, performance? We often do that. What we can't tolerate remembering or feeling from our own young experiences, we project onto or find something in the outer world to mirror it for us. How much of Jackson's fame and fans had been responding to this? And how many had been drawn in by the compulsion fantasy to do to others what had been done to them? Also a common response to child abuse. The fantasy and feelings almost always, even if repressed. The acting out, not always, not necessarily, but often expressed in other ways. Among them, watching horror shows or songs entitled Thriller or Bad. However people were drawn into Michael Jackson, it's so important to explore what it was in each person that was vulnerable to being seduced, even by his songs. I've wondered, if I had read the lyrics to these songs way back when, would I have realized the mirrors they were of the abuse of Michael and the abuse by Michael? Would I have had enough experience working with people suffering from childhood encounters with sexual abuse in particular, and any kind of abuse in general, that I would have recognized it and been able to create a way to expose it, reveal it, help people pierce their defenses against it? I don't know. But I do know it's right there in his songs, and has been all along. Any one or more of us could have seen it if we'd had the awareness, the sight, the vision, the heart, the willingness to receive and connect beneath everything else that was going on. This is a painful example of how we all contributed to the abuse of children all over the world. This is a single painful example of how we have all been part of the village that abused the children. Some who work to end the abuse of children. There are some in our world who get it, who get how much child abuse and child sexual abuse goes on in our world. There are some who get the patterns of grooming that is so enmeshed with the sexual abuse itself. There's some who get the seduction in many forms, including both trusting and frightening, both seemingly gentle and violent, and all very confusing for a child. Among those I know get it, there is the California Protective Parents Association. There is Oprah Winfrey, who spoke out after the release of the movie, saying that this moment is bigger than Michael Jackson, acknowledging that she did 217 shows in 25 years on sexual abuse, trying to get people to see the scourge on humanity, the societal corruption that was being revealed once again through this movie. There are those I have worked with who have been sexually abused, who are thankful as I am for the Me Too movement, but who are so distressed that these recent movements don't attend to the sexual abuse that's happening to children all over our country and our world every single day. There are a few of my colleagues who have supported and encouraged me to write about this again and again. And there is, of course, my heart and soul and my own muse calling to me again and again to help more and more deeply, more and more broadly, to heal child sexual abuse as one specific form, and of course, child abuse in all its forms. As I ended part one, mind you, this is a mirror to us not only of how we react to the sexual abuse of children, but also of how we react to other serious problems in our lives, in our families, in our institutions and organizations, in our countries, and in our world. Tune in soon for the next installment to learn more about the impact of the village that helps to abuse children, the impact by us and on us all over our world every single day.